Okay, here we have the old server. It's a dual 2.7 gigahertz G5. The case is a little beat up. A friend of mine sent it to me from Seattle. I think it might have gotten some cosmetic damage during shipping, but the machine itself works fine. I recently replaced it with this. I inherited this from my job, where I work as a computer repair technician. It's a Dell PowerEdge 2900. The main reason I wanted this computer was because it has a PERC 5 RAID card. You can actually put 8 hard drives in the front of it. I need to get more caddies, but they're pretty cheap. Anyway, some people were asking me about this computer just because of the things I've done to it, so I thought I'd make this little video. If we open up the side of it here, you can see there's a SCSI cable here. I disconnected it. That goes to the DAT drive because I'm never going to use it. So I have this Adaptec LVD Ultra SCSI 3 card here that I just ripped out of the machine. If anybody wants it, let me know. I'll give you the DAT drive too. If we look at these cards here, on the top I've got a Intel dual gigabit Ethernet PCIe card. Directly below that there's a Dell Radeon 5350. More on that here in a minute. Directly below that is actually an Apple gigabit Ethernet card. It's a PCIX card with a Broadcom chipset. I'll explain the reason for that being in here in a minute. And then below that there's the PERC card for the RAID array. You'll see it has a memory slot on top of it. It's got 256 meg in there now. I think eventually I'm going to put some more memory into it. So, onto this video card. This was a PCIe 16X card. If you look, you'll see the PCIe slots are all short. The bottom one is an 8X slot, and the other ones are 4X slots. Of course, that's a problem. And I don't want to modify the motherboard to put the card in. If you look at this Asus card I have here, you can see the connector goes all the way down the length of the card pretty much. So you go, well, how the hell are you going to plug that into a shorter slot without modifying the motherboard? Well, I did some research and I found out that the first set of pins on the short part of the connector are actually the power and the sync signal, and the rest of them are for the lanes, so you can actually modify the card to physically fit into the slot, and it'll work. So what I did was, I took a hacksaw and a file, and I cut a notch in the card. I counted out 38 pins, which is exactly the length of an 8X PCI slot. And I cut a notch after that. And now I can take the card and plug it into the slot so that it physically fits. One other thing with these Dell systems, directly underneath the RAID card, you can see the gold finger connectors there, is a remote access card that normally hooks to the motherboard with a couple of ribbon cables. These Dell servers do not have a way in the BIOS to disable built-in video, just because it's a server, so it's not going to allow for that sort of thing. So what we do is we unhook that remote access card, and it disconnects the internal video. Kind of interesting. Gotta get the side case on here, so in just a second here. Tricky bugger. SCSI cable's in the way. I'll just kind of move that. Out of our way here. There we go. So this Dell card, the GPU Has a weird connector. Some of you may have seen this. I used to remember the name of it, but I don't anymore. Basically, it requires an adapter with a shitload of pins, and it comes out to 2 DVI connectors. So we'll hook that up here. Screw this in. And then we'll fire this bad boy up. Pretty loud initially, but it's fine. See, we have video on that external video card. I'm working at F11 to boot. Just because I'm lazy, I haven't bothered to go into the BIOS and tell it to boot off of the internal serial ATA drive that I hooked up to the built-in SATA port. It's an SSD. It's telling us I don't have the memory installed in an optimal configuration. I really don't care about that. It doesn't make a difference once I'm inside of the operating system. And frankly, I'm too lazy to look at the data sheet on this computer to figure out which memory slots are what. There are 12 of them. They're not labeled on the board. And it's just a fucking pain in the ass to deal with. Down there at the bottom, it's initializing the PERC card. We're just waiting for it to detect the drives. That usually takes just a moment. It's going to bitch at us because the backup battery for the PERC card is dead. Eventually I'll replace that. It's found 3 logical drives. That's how many I have installed in the system and the RAID array. That holds all of my data separate from the operating system. That right there is the remote access card. You can see that it doesn't have any addresses because I've disconnected it. And this last warning says no microcode uploaded from processor 1 or processor 2. This isn't going to keep the system from working, but what I need to do actually is probably update the firmware on the computer because I put newer processors into it. Again, it's something I'm going to get around to, but for now I don't need to do it. If we hit F1 here, we'll come down to the hard drive and it's going to say embedded serial ATA port A. And this is where things get interesting. You can see we're loaded into the bootloader here. We're actually going to be running Mac OS X Server on this machine. I've gotten pretty good at Hackintoshing computers. These Dell systems are pretty close to the hardware that's in a Mac Pro. And I personally prefer Mac OS X Server over Windows Server. It's just less of a pain for me to deal with. So we're just getting some messages about the Ethernet, etc. coming up. And here we are. We have the desktop. Here we have all of the hard drives. These orange ones are hooked up to the PERC card here. The main one is our SSD. Come over here to server and pull up server admin. It's going to give us stats on the machine. Once it actually loads, sometimes it takes it a minute. And we can pull system profiler. See that it's telling us we have a Mac Pro quad-core Intel 1.87. Got 4 gigs of memory in it. If we look at our graphics displays, it shows our Radeon with the 8X PCI lane that we modified. If we come down to parallel SCSI, we can see our PERC 5i integrated card that was installed with a driver that I had to modify the source code of. It was written by a Russian